that we can see how to calculate the need for disability insurance, our next step is going to be to calculate the morbidity. So taking into account how much disability insurance this person needs, we're now going to go on to the next stage. Now, those of you that are familiar with life insurance will already be aware that with life insurance, we want to look at age, gender, and smoking status. Those are very important considerations for disability insurance as well. For life insurance, those would be the most important considerations. But for disability insurance, while age, gender, and smoking status are important, the most important thing is actually going to be, what does this person do for a living? Their occupation. So we're going to break down, for our purposes here, 5 occupation classifications. There are some insurers out there who would use 6 occupation classifications, but for the most part, if we work with 5, we'll be in good shape. We'll understand how these concepts work, and will help us going forward. And what we'll find here is that different occupations will fit at different points along this chart. Our 5s are going to have access to the most generous definitions of disability. They're going to pay the least on a dollar-for-dollar basis for their coverage, whereas our 1s are going to have access to the most restrictive definitions of disability, and they're going to pay the most for the coverage that they receive. So let's have a look at our 5s. We'll see who fits into these categories. I like to think of this as kind of an alphabet soup. So we have up here people like the CEO of a company, or some insurers would insure a dentist up here, or a medical doctor, or a chartered accountant. These would all be good examples of people that would fit into this occupation class 5 or 4A, although some insurers treat dentists differently. Our 4s, in our 4s, we're going to have other sorts of professionals. We would have here, for example, our skilled office workers, your human resources professionals, for example, the people who work in the accounting department, maybe. These people who have typically some sort of a professional designation or a degree in order to do whatever it is that they do. Our 3s, we're going to find here, salespeople, for example, a lot of insurers will insure teachers here, and you'll find some insurers, depending on the exact nature of the duties for this person, but insurers will insure non-office supervisors in some cases here, such as a foreman or a site supervisor. Our 2s then, in our 2s, we're going to find skilled laborers, and most tradespeople, although not all tradespeople are necessarily going to fit here. And then our 1s, we're going to find down here, typically our riskiest occupations. This is where we would find unskilled labor type of jobs and agricultural workers. So what we would see then, these folks up here are 5s. They're typically going to have the safest jobs. Think about our accountant, for example. What is the likelihood of our accountant getting injured at work? Really nasty paper cut? Who knows? Also, if our accountant does get hurt, let's say our accountant goes away for the weekend skiing and breaks his leg skiing. Well, there's no reason he couldn't be back to work the next day after breaking his leg skiing. He comes back to work on cast and crutches, and he's fine. He can still do all the things that he would do as part of his day-to-day work. So we would see here short absences. Also, what we're normally going to see here is people who have worked very hard to get where they are. They've gone to school for a long time. They likely have invested more than just time and money into getting here as well. So we would say that these people typically have a high motivation and a high stability. That is, they're doing jobs that they want to do, and they're excited about doing them. Now, that's not to pick on anybody who falls elsewhere on the chart, but this is how insurance companies generally approach this. So let's have a look at our ones now as a way of contrast. We could have, for example, a miner. A miner would be a good example of somebody who would fit into this category. And anybody who follows the news will know that these jobs are not particularly safe. We would see down here with our ones a very dangerous set of jobs. And then imagine if our miner does go off skiing for the weekend and breaks his leg, just as our accountant had. Well, our miner is not in a position where he's going back to work on a cast and crutches. So these people would also have longer absences if they had to be away from work. And, again, not to paint anybody with a broad brush here, but this is how insurance approaches this. And some of you watching this video will have worked in jobs like this, and some of you will have seen some of your coworkers who maybe were not excited about getting up and going to work every day. People who would look for a way to get out of the workplace or whatever you happen to have. So we would say over here as well that these people are going to have low motivation and low stability. Now, taking all that into account, we can recognize the type of disability benefit that these people are going to be able to access. So, the folks up at the top of the chart here are going to have access to the most generous definition of disability at the lowest cost, typically. They're going to have access to, for their total definition of disability, that is, we would say this person is totally disabled when they can't do their own occupation. What does that mean? Well, that means that, let's say we have our surgeon up here. A surgeon, a very specific type of doctor, whose skills very much rely on their ability to use their hands. Let's say that our surgeon develops a disability that renders them unable to use their hands. I don't think anybody would want that person operating on them at that point. So now, what happens is we say that person normally collected the income from being a surgeon. Well, now, they're not able to do their own occupation. They're going to start to receive disability benefits by virtue of the fact they can't do that own occupation. And as long as they can't do their own occupation, they're going to continue to receive disability benefits. Now, let's say that our surgeon becomes disabled, becomes unable to use their hands, can't work as a surgeon anymore. And this person ends up collecting own occupation disability benefits. But maybe after a year or so on disability, this person says, you know, I can't just sit around the house anymore. I do have a pretty good skill set that I'd like to go out and use. And maybe what happens is our surgeon goes and gets a job at the Faculty of Medicine at the local university teaching surgery. They're going to get paid to teach surgery, and because they're still not doing their own occupation, that is working as a surgeon, they're going to continue to receive that disability benefit. So they will actually be able to double up their disability benefits. It's really only people in the own occupation classes that are going to get that. Really only our 5s or our 4As they're going to have access to that very generous own occupation definition of disability. Our 1s, these folks down here, they're going to have a more restrictive definition of disability. They're going to have access to the any occupation or any OC definition of disability. And what this means, this person is going to get benefits as long as they can't do any occupation at all. So let's say we have somebody who works in the agricultural industry, maybe somebody who makes their living on grain elevators, for example, and this person becomes disabled, becomes unable to do their job. Maybe after a period of 6 or 7 months, they develop the ability to be mobile again, maybe even from a wheelchair. At that point, their doctor says, you know, there are jobs you could do. The insurance company looks at that medical report and says, that seems fair. This person could go to work in a contact center, for example, or maybe do an administrative job somewhere. Once they're able to do some other job, they're no longer eligible for that NEOC definition of disability. Now, different insurance companies are going to approach that differently. Some insurance companies will be very generous in applying that NEOC definition of disability, and some insurance companies will be more restrictive. Now, you're probably asking, well, what about these folks in the middle, our 2s, 3s, and our 4s? And chances are most of the folks watching this video fall somewhere into those categories. So, these folks have access to what we call the regular occupation definition of disability. And by regular occupation, what we mean is that these people will get benefits as long as they can't do a job that falls within the regular range of their skills, education, or experience. Or sometimes we would say skills, training, or experience. What that really means is you had a resume before you became disabled. The resume had a certain set of skills on it, things that you were able to do. As long as you're able to do a job that you would reasonably get with that resume, we would say you're not disabled. If you can't do a job that falls within the skill sets on your resume, the things that you would normally apply for, then we'd say you are now disabled. You're not able to do a job that falls within the regular range of your skills, education, or experience. We're going to pay you a disability benefit. Now, what if you are able to do one of those jobs, but you find that your income is significantly reduced from your pre-disability levels? Well, now what's going to happen is, within this regular occupation definition of disability, we're going to top up your income to your pre-disability level. How that actually gets interpreted varies from insurance company to insurance company. The idea here is the same, though, across the board, that if we have somebody who was doing a job within this 3 range and making, let's say, $100,000 a year, and they become disabled, no longer able to do that job, now earning just $60,000 a year, the insurance company says, we're going to fill in that $40,000 gap for you.